Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today: the Malagasy government exposed faulty coronavirus test results provided by the French laboratory Pasteur Institute. The Burundi government expels the World Health Organization team over interference in the pandemic response. South African president announces further easing of lockdown amid virus-fueled political rivalries. Our top story today: the Malagasy government announced on Wednesday evening that the results of coronavirus tests conducted by the Pasteur Institute in Madagascar contain serious errors, according to the report of the internal investigation conducted by the reputed French laboratory at the request of the Malagasy government. The Pasteur Institute reported that there were 67 positive new coronavirus cases in the country when there were only 5, and has so far failed to give a satisfactory answer when Malagasy authorities hold them accountable, according to government spokeswoman and communication minister Lalatiana Hagotondrazafi. These investigations took place following the publication on Thursday, the 7th of May, of different figures of coronavirus contamination. The Malagasy authorities had announced 35 new positive cases of coronavirus in the country, while the World Health Organization had announced 67. To get a clearer picture, the Malagasy authorities therefore asked the French laboratory to conduct tests. The investigations will continue because the elements of response provided on the false results did not make it possible to elucidate the flaws and those responsible for this grave mistake. It will no longer be the Pasteur Institute alone that will carry out the tests on new suspected cases of coronavirus. The Charles Mérieux laboratory will also carry them out at the same time to avoid further errors. In Burundi, the entire World Health Organization team in charge of the coronavirus pandemic response was ordered to leave the country by this Friday, according to a note sent by the head of Burundian diplomacy to the office of the World Health Organization. This note that leaked to the press is directed at the World Health Organization representative in Burundi, Mr. Walter Kazadi Mulumbo, and the 3 members of his bureau. A month ago, Mr. Mulumbo and his team members had barely escaped expulsion from the Burundian territory after the government had criticized them for their interference in its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. This time around, the government walked the talk.
We will immediately begin a process of consultation with relevant stakeholders on the proposal that by the end of May, most of the country should be placed on alert level 3.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced on Wednesday a further easing of the strict 7-week lockdown imposed in the country to stem the progression of the coronavirus. The country most affected by the pandemic in sub-Saharan Africa moved from alert level 5 to level 4 on the 1st of May, which has already enabled certain economic sectors to restart. Level 3 should now enable activity to resume in other economic sectors. It must be said that the coronavirus pandemic is fueling political and regional rivalries in the country. The opposition is increasingly criticizing the lockdown decreed by the government for being draconian and damaging the country's economy, which was in recession before the pandemic.
Some of our people have questioned whether our approach in dealing with the coronavirus has been at the expense of the livelihood of our people. Our strategic approach has been based on saving lives and preserving livelihoods. Our key objective has always been to slow down the infection rate through a number of interventions in our coronavirus prevention toolbox.
President Ramaphosa highlighted the efforts his government has put in place since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic to test the population as much as possible.
Our door-to-door screening campaign in vulnerable communities across the country has resulted in over 100,000 people being referred for testing. This gave us a good indication of the extent of the infection amongst our people.
The ruling party, the African National Congress, accuses the opposition of being an accomplice of the spread of COVID-19 in the south of the country. The province of Eastern Cape, managed by the African National Congress, criticizes the region of Western Cape, led by the Democratic Alliance, for deliberately allowing people to enter its territory in violation of the strict containment rules in force, and announced its intention to bring the matter to justice. Western Cape Prime Minister Alan Winde rejected these allegations. In Senegal, the Catholic Church announced on Wednesday its decision to maintain the suspension of collective prayers, which they had initiated since the 13th of March, until further notice, to avoid churches being a vector of COVID-19 contamination, despite President Macky Sall's recent decision to reopen all places of worship in the country. Therefore, all public masses, kermesses and pilgrimages remain suspended. The churches of Senegal remain open, but only for private devotions. The country has officially recorded 2,105 cases of virus contamination, including 782 recoveries. The battle against coronavirus seems to be over in Mauritius. The authorities announced on Wednesday on television that they have not recorded any new positive case of coronavirus in the country for 17 days, believing that they have won a first battle against the disease thanks to the cooperation of the population. However, the Ministry of Health urged the population to remain vigilant, insisting that the country has won an important battle but not yet the war. The Mauritian government imposed one of the strictest lockdowns in Africa since late March, going as far as ordering the closure of supermarkets for 10 days. Mauritius has officially registered 332 cases of COVID-19 contamination, including 322 recoveries. So far spared by the disease, Lesotho reported its first case of coronavirus contamination on Wednesday. Health workers detected the positive case following a series of 81 tests carried out last week on people arriving in the country from South Africa and Saudi Arabia, according to the Ministry of Health. The country has closed its borders until further notice, and mask wearing has become mandatory in public places. On the political front, the 2020 presidential election in Malawi could take place a week earlier than expected. The Electoral Commission suggested on Wednesday to advance from the 2nd of July to the 23rd of June the presidential election, following the Supreme Court's recent confirmation of the cancellation for fraud of President Peter Mutharika's re-election last year. The Electoral Commission indicated that the results of the new election should be published at least 150 days after the court's judgment issued last week, and therefore offered to hold the election a bit sooner to have more time for counting votes and meet the deadline ordered by the court. It is now up to Parliament to validate this date. The three candidates officially registered for the new presidential election are outgoing President Peter Mutharika, his main opponent Lazarus Chakwera, and Peter Kuwani, leader of the Mbakuwaku Movement for Development. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari appointed on Wednesday Professor Ibrahim Gambari, a former top United Nations diplomat, as his chief of staff following the death of incumbent Abba Kyari, who died of coronavirus on the 17th of April. Mr. Gambari served as President Buhari's foreign minister in the 80s. He then became a United Nations Under-Secretary General for Africa, then led by Kofi Annan. In Ivory Coast, a minor cabinet reshuffle was announced on Wednesday to tighten ranks around Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly, currently in France for medical reasons and candidate of the ruling party for the presidential election in October. This reshuffle was marked by the replacement of two personalities who had opposed the appointment of the Prime Minister in March as a candidate for the rally of Oufouettists for Democracy and Peace to potentially take over from President Alassane Ouattara. On the security front in Nigeria, the police announced on Wednesday that 15 people were killed in an attack on the village of Gornan Rogo in the north of the country, in a region regularly plagued by violence between Fulani herders and Christian farmers, especially for issues relating to the access to land and water. The village was attacked early on Tuesday while the inhabitants were sleeping. The attackers shot at the villagers, killing 15 people and wounding 5 others. The police chased them to prevent retaliations. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari condemned the wave of attacks and counterattacks between Fulani and Adara communities in a statement posted on Twitter. In Burkina Faso, the authorities announced on Wednesday that 12 people arrested for suspected acts of terrorism were found dead in their detention cells at the police station of Tanwal-Bougou in the eastern part of the country. According to judicial sources, a total of 25 people were arrested in the night of Monday to Tuesday by the Defense and Security Forces. However, 12 of them died in their cells the same night. An investigation is currently underway. Finally, a strange event took place in Ivory Coast in Gesankro village near Bouaké as some villagers witnessed and identified debris falling from the sky.
We were sitting there. All of a sudden, we heard a noise. The leaves started turning, and the old woman said, "Ah, old man, there is a tree that fell behind us." He said, "No, there is no wind. How can the tree fall? I'm going to see."
The mysterious event left the villagers scared.
I was very scared. The whole family was scared. We came to see. We don't even know what to do. We don't even know what it is. I have never seen anything like it that falls from the sky. Really, it was really weird. It was weird for me, so we were all scared.
Local police are investigating the nature and origin of the detritus, which could be bits of a Chinese rocket. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.